Fukushima nuclear plant, which experienced such terrible tsunami in 2011.
That's right. Look, people in Japan are quite used to getting tsunami alerts and earthquake alerts. You know, we get them on the phones quite regularly. But I think a tsunami warning like this, given how huge the earthquake was in the Pacific coast of Russia, and given the how shallow it is, the risk of aftershocks, people are generally nervous. But I would say that any tsunami alert or warning that includes the Fukushima area, which this one does, triggers a heightened sense of concern because of what happened in 2011, that triple disaster, including the nuclear meltdown. We heard from TEPCO, the company that operates the Fukushima nuclear Daiichi power plant, and they said that all workers have been evacuated as a precautionary measure, but they were quick to say that there were no abnormalities that have been reported. It's still an area of concern because all of those years later, there is still radioactive debris at the bottom of these nuclear power plants, and it's constantly being cooled by huge amounts of water that then gets stored in huge tanks near the site. So they have so many safety measures in place in normal times, evacuation being one of them when a warning like this happens. But essentially, they want to keep it as safe as possible, as isolated as possible, with people around the area being told to evacuate nearly 20 kilos or 30 kilometers away until they assess again how high or how hard a potential tsunami could hit later in the later or coming hours.
And Shaima, school summer holidays going on right now in Japan. I mean, that must be really affecting the number of people who are by the coast.
It's really interesting because the past few days, there have been, heat waves and record high temperatures, and there were reports about how many families are trying to escape and go to the beach, and many pictures of the beaches. So, families would have been trying to escape the heat to beaches, but of course, after today's warning, all of them would have evacuated to higher ground. We've seen pictures of some gridlock and traffic jams of families, instead of being in the beach, abandoned it and, were stuck in traffic jams as they try to evacuate. We've seen other people, for example, go to rooftops to make sure that they're as high as possible. That was in the Hokkaido area. Some others were in an observatory building on high ground across the beach area in Chiba, south of Tokyo. So in general, people have been heeding the warning. They've been listening to the alerts. They're constantly coming to us and have been maintaining places in high areas.
And you say how people in Japan are well used to getting alerts and getting warnings, living in a place that is geologically as it is. But hearing that this earthquake was the size it was, how did people react?
I think it's the size of it, the fact that it's huge, 8.8, the fact that it's affecting large areas of the Pacific. But I also think it's the fact that there isn't, it's the unpredictability of it, the fact that, we've had waves, a number of waves hit different parts of the Pacific coast, and yet people are being told the risk is far from over, that you need to keep on high alert, that higher waves can hit harder later in the day. And I think that's really what's been a little bit discombobulating, the fact that this is as the earthquake is as big as it is, shallow as it is, with the risk of aftershocks affecting the Pacific, which means that it affects the waves that come to these shores, and that it could go on for several hours. And some experts are saying it could actually last for a day, if not more, after the initial earthquake.
Shaima, thank you very much. Shaima Khalil reporting live from Tokyo. Well, following that earthquake just off the east coast of Russia, the whole Pacific affected potentially by this. Let's talk to our Australia correspondent, Katie Watson. Katie, no alert for Australia itself, though.
That's right. Agencies here say there is no tsunami alert, but neighbouring New Zealand earlier issued a national advisory. It came in the early afternoon, warning that there could be unusual currents and surges, and if that happens, it would likely come around midnight local time. That's in about 3 hours time. Now there's been the threat is for the North Island, the South Island, and some smaller islands as well, and is likely to hit the eastern side of the North Island first. But it's an advisory. It's told people who are out on the water, who live on the water, to come onto shore. Certainly in the Auckland area on the North Island, there have been some centres set up. There's some shelter provided if you can't find any family or friends to stay with, and they've said to stay alert and assume that there's a threat unless the advisory has been cancelled.
And what are you hearing from other parts of the southern Pacific region?
So the Cook Islands upgraded an advisory to a warning, talking of waves between 0.3 metres and a metre high. Of course, the Pacific Islands are much lower lying. They're more vulnerable in that sense. But if you, in terms of, most of it is about an advisory. So Samoa, Tonga, Solomon Islands have warned their residents to stay alert, to come into shore, to not go out onto the sea, and remain, vigilant as to whether there will be a threat later on. But that's certainly, to take it seriously, even though these are advisories, that there is some threat, and until that's passed, to take it seriously.
And some of these nations you mentioned, Katie, incredibly low lying. What is their level of tsunami preparedness?
Well, if you compare the preparedness of the likes of New Zealand, there was a national alert that people got on their phones. Parliament was debating a bill at the time. It paused briefly so people could digest the information and then carry on. This part of the world, not here in Australia, but certainly on the Pacific, in New Zealand, it's not a stranger to natural disasters. But of course, it also relies on other nations as well in terms of funding to make sure that they're as safe as possible. And when it comes to the Pacific Islands, smaller Pacific nations, yes, they are more vulnerable, more low-lying, and Tonga just in recent years has been a victim of that. So there is obviously concern when these things happen. They make sure that there's a lot of warning, and of course, because this was has spanned the globe, there's been a much more awareness, of course, of the risks.